So I'm kind of a rule breaker. I'm going to use the handheld mic because I can. I'm the kind of person, I don't like a wire running down my back, and I also move too much to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and use this today as I kind of share with you guys and everything. And you know what I really hope from this time, I realized as I was walking through some of my pictures with my in-laws whenever I got back, I really want this time of sharing to be a little more like informal. Not necessarily that I want you guys to talk back because this is my time to talk, but I just want this to be a little more of just kind of me talking to you guys as my church family and getting to share this experience with you. But before I left, Mike talked to me and he said, "Hey, when you get back, would you like to share in the service?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to have lots of stuff to talk about, many great experiences, things like that. I'd love a chance to get to share with the church about how my trip went and everything." And see, me being the naive youth pastor that I am, thought that I would get 10, maybe 15 minutes. And I land, and I'm kind of all jet-lagged and everything, and I drive home, and I see Haley, and she goes, "Hey, Mike wanted me to check with you and make sure you were still good to do the whole service on Sunday." And I was like, well, I need to go on another mission trip then, because I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But I kind of really started to think. I talked with Mike a little bit about it and kind of came up with some different things to talk. But regardless, I may still not go the whole time, so the good news is we'll beat the Methodists to lunch today. So first thing I really wanted to talk to you guys about was I want to share a little bit of my testimony whenever it came to missions and kind of what missions meant to me as someone who grew up in the church and had a call to ministry on their life from a time I was in high school. Missions was always something that I found, not necessarily that it wasn't for me, but I felt that missions, like as far as missions overseas, was something that required almost a special calling. I'm a homebody. I enjoy being from America. I enjoy being from Oklahoma. I like the comfort that comes in that, and I like the things being regular and things being familiar to me and everything. And throughout my time in youth as a student, I never felt a burden, or I never felt a passion to do a mission trip overseas. And while all my other friends were having these great experiences and doing all these great things, I was just like, Scripture calls us to make disciples of all nations, and that includes our own. And I felt more of an internal passion for serving my country that I lived in, or the place that I lived in, instead of always looking to go somewhere else to do ministry. And I think that's really what fueled my call to ministry, was this passion that I had for my own community, this passion that I had for my own country. And I really used that to really fuel myself in my education and fuel myself in my pursuit of a job in ministry, and used it to really shape how the foundation that I built my ministry on. And for those of you who were on the search committee that went through the interview process with me, I remember mentioning, Haley and I were talking about this, that this exact thing to them, that, because Mike obviously brought up how important missions is to him and everything, and asked me kind of what my view was it and what I had kind of been through, and I said exactly what I just told you, that I felt that my call to missions was a little more to be, to serve where I live in my community. And his first question was, well, would you be willing to get a passport and consider it? And I said, yes, I would be willing to get a passport and consider it. Little did I know the journey that God would take me on once I was a staff member at this church. Sitting around, when I say sitting around, that sounds like I don't do anything when Mike leaves. But when Mike would be on trips, I'd sit at the church and we'd get video calls, we'd get Facebook messages of these great things that God was doing on these trips that he would go on, and it started to plant this seed of desire, and it started to make me feel that this was something that God was calling me towards. And it was January of 2017. I was looking at this exact trip, this trip to Seville, Spain, and considered taking a few of my students. And I even went through the process of going and applying and getting a passport, just so when the time came that it was time for me to serve the Lord in this capacity, that would be one less step I would have to take. And I remember Mike taking me. Didn't Marilyn go at the same time? I think we went and got our passport. We're passport buddies. But we went and got our passports at the same time, and that trip ended up falling through. But that passion and that desire to serve the Lord in this capacity of going overseas to reach people who are from a different culture, a different country, a different world, it seems, than myself, was still there. And so as we ran back and we got about to January again, I had kind of, in some ways, missed the boat on this trip again. And long story short, I came across another youth pastor that I know that's in the Tulsa area, and I was talking to him, and he said, yeah, I'm going as the trip coordinator for the trip to Seville. And I really felt like that was God just slapping me in the face going, how many times do I have to tell you to go on this trip? And so I contacted Brian Baldwin, who works heavily with the Go Students organization, which is the BGCO student mission organization. And I said, hey, I really feel like I may have missed something here. Is there still a chance I can get in on that Seville trip? And he was able to work with me, and we were able to get that applied. And so I really tell you guys this to show you that, that God is continually working on us. And even when we feel like we're set in our ways and that we've come to this point to where this is the way that we view a certain aspect of our Christianity or a certain aspect of our relationship with God, He's constantly working and molding and changing us and preparing us for new experiences in our lives. I think my daughter's about to be banished, so everyone watch her as she walks out, because that is her authentic Spain garb that she's not going to get to show off anymore. But anyway, this trip was really something that was eye-opening, and like Mike said, was very life-changing for me in a lot of ways. And so I really told Mike I wanted to lay out, kind of want to share my testimony about missions, and then I wanted to walk you through a little bit of my trip. And I tried to, and I know you're the same way, but I really tried. I was looking through all my pictures. I think I posted almost 300 pictures to my family shared group of all the things that I did. And I was looking through them last night and this morning, and I was going, which ones do I want to share? And I cut it down to the bare bones so we get 35. So this was my mission team. And we had to be careful. A little side note just to begin here. We had to be very careful because the term missionary or the term missions over there carries a very negative connotation. They view a lot of the Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, that kind of movement, that they do a lot of mission work over there, and they term themselves as missionaries. And so they view missionaries as these borderline, or take it as you will, I'm not going to speak to those theologies, but they view them as like cult leaders almost. And so if you use the term missions or the term missionary, they're immediately very turned off to this idea of what you're trying to share with them. So I wasn't able to use the term mission team, but now we're here and we understand exactly what this was about. But this was my mission team. We had 11 high school students and 6 adult sponsors, 3 of which were our current youth pastors, and 1 of which is a former youth pastor. So, I'm sorry, this mic's getting me out. But this was our team, a really good group of students, all walks of life, some kids that were just recently graduated high school all the way down to someone who just finished their freshman year. Lots of different walks of life. We had kids from a big city like Broken Arrow, and all the way down to kids from smaller cities like Rush Springs and stuff like that. So we had a great demographic that brought a lot of different things to the plate. And the cool thing about this trip, and when you fly east, you'll realize that you lose time as you go that way. But as we flew over the Atlantic Ocean, a cool thing happened. Tyler, if you'll flip to the next picture. As we were just crossing over into the sea, we got to see the sunset over the Atlantic Ocean, which was very beautiful from up. And this was about the best that I could do from in a plane through like those big thick windows and everything. But this was the sun setting over the Atlantic, and because of traveling east and the time change, we also got to, if you will hit the next one, see the sun rise over the Atlantic, which was really interesting. But both were very beautiful sights to behold, and really made the trip over there, well, I say seem short, but it really didn't seem short. But it was about an 8-hour flight. Most of it was spent over water. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. So this is the actual city of Seville. And as you fly in, and it doesn't, one of the things that I was looking at and talked to people was that this does not look like what you would characterize as a big city, you know, because you usually think of a big city as something with these tall skyscrapers and everything. But when you think about how high I was in the air at this time and looking down how spread out that city is, it really is quite massive. And I'll get into a little bit more later about why the city does not go vertically. It is more spread out instead of vertically. But this was the first view that I got of Seville as we were flying over. Go ahead and go to the next one. This was a law-breaking picture. I will just tell you right now, I'm probably a felon in Spain because of this picture. But at the airport, they pull you right out to the tarmac, and you get out and you walk and you take a bus into the airport. And as we were taxiing in, I saw that they had written Sevilla, which is Spanish for Seville, on the top of the airport like that. And so as we were loading the bus, I just ran over real quick and took a picture, and I ran back to the bus, and I get on the bus, and there was a big sign that said, you know, the law states no pictures or cell phone use or smoking. And I was like, well, I broke 2 of the 3. So, but anyway, everyone was really jealous of that picture because no one else had the guts to break all those laws and go take it, I guess. I don't know. Let's go to the next one. So Bermujos is kind of the suburb. It's really kind of one of the smaller communities around Seville. And this is actually where our hotel was, where we stayed, and it was also where the church that we served at was at. Go ahead and go to the next one. I think it's the church. Yeah. So this was the church that we served at, and again, they really try not to use, and we'll get more into why this is and understand this a little bit later, but they don't use the term church a whole lot when they're referring to this building. A church in Spanish would be iglesia, which you don't see anywhere on this building. It's a community Christian center. You can see in the Centro Cristiano. I don't speak Spanish very well, so you think it's funny listening to me. You should have seen the Spanish kids looking at me going, yeah, you're awful at this. But it was just the Community Christian Center is basically what the name of this was. But this was the church, and it was in a strip mall type thing, and it was right next to a plumbing store and a hardware store and a pool store. And then actually right next door, I want to say it was closed because I never saw the door open, but right next to it was a bar, like a pub and a bar was literally right next door to the church, which we had a lot of good laughs about throughout the week. So go ahead and hit the next one. So what I want to talk to you guys about a little bit to understand what this mission project was really about, and to understand the situation that myself and these students were thrown into, you really have to understand the culture of Spain. And so this picture was actually taken towards the end of the week, but I felt it appropriate to move these ones to the front so that I could share a little bit with you about the culture that Spain has. Because of different people who were in power for a large majority of Spanish history in the 1900s, they have a very close identification with their Spanish heritage, with the idea of Catholicism, in the idea that I'm Spanish, therefore I am Catholic. They do not have to attend church at a Catholic church. They don't have to do anything to signify being Catholic, but they identify themselves as Catholic. And you look around, this was actually the cathedral, the main cathedral in Seville. It is actually the largest cathedral in the world by cubic feet or meters or whatever they use. It all works the same no matter what measurement you use. It's the largest cathedral in the world. And you can see obviously how grand and ornate this was. And actually Spain went through multiple different rules, people who were in charge during the construction of this. So as you walked around it, you would see different styles of architecture because they weren't able to build it all during one rule, which was very unique. But this was kind of the side that we originally had walked down. Go ahead and click to the next one. I took a couple pictures of this cathedral. It was really quite amazing to behold, and you can see, I like this picture because you can see in the little archway, in every single little socket, there's a sculpture of it. And I'm just thinking to myself how long it would take to make an individual sculpture, and then to have one in every single little socket. And this was just one of probably 30 or 40 archways like this in the entirety of this church. So just the amount of detail that went into this, but just kind of the grand scale that this church was ongoing. I think there's one or two more. Again, this is just another, you can obviously see the difference in architecture from this one to the other one. This was a different part of the church with a statue in front of it. I think there's one more. Okay, there's alleyways between all the buildings that you walk down. I got a picture of us in one a little bit later. But this was just randomly placed in an alleyway. And I threw this in here to show you guys because these are both very, very Catholic images in their artwork and everything. And you can see they have lights on them, so at night these would light up. And I mean, just everywhere you looked, the Catholic influence was very prevalent. And they identify that very closely with who they are as a people. Go ahead and go to the next one. Okay, this was the bell tower. Let me see if I can say this right. It was the Heralda was the name of the bell tower. And why I was telling you guys that the reason the city does not go vertically is because there was actually for the longest time a city ordinance stating that no building was allowed to be taller than the bell tower. The church took so much precedence over the city's functioning and growth that nothing was allowed to be taller than this bell tower. And actually, you can go up in it. You have to pay like €3-4, but it's all ramps up on the inside because they were smarter than apparently tourists are, and they would take horses up so they didn't have to walk up all the ramps. But now all these people pay money to walk up all these ramps, and I got tired just looking at it, honestly. But so this was obviously, you can see the different stories that are on it. I mean, this was probably equivalent to a 20 to 25 story building. But when you looked around and you could see this thing, you could see that tower from almost any point in the city because it was the tallest building. And I mean, it just was really eye-opening to this idea of how closely tied Catholicism was to to their identity. And they kept telling us in our trainings and in our debriefings, they said, you guys got to remember that doing missions in a first world country is entirely different than doing missions in a third world country. They said because to really connect with another human, you really almost have to offer them something that they need, right? You have to give them something that they want. And in a third world country, a lot of those people, they want hope. They want help and they want hope. And so when you bring them the hope that comes with Jesus Christ, they're very receptive to this and they want to latch onto that. In a first world country, albeit Spain's economy is in shambles right now, but they have hope because they do have a functioning economy somewhat. But the people there they're not in necessary need of like food or clothes or the basic essentials to life, and so people are a little less receptive to this idea of just walking up and sharing the gospel with them, especially because they have this Catholic background that teaches them I was baptized when I was born, and that was pretty much all I needed to do. So it was very, very interesting to look at this. And so what they really kept telling us was this week was not about how many people got saved. You know, that usually when you come back from a mission trip, there's this number that is presented of how many salvations there were, and they kept telling us that is not, as much as that is your focus this week, if you have that opportunity, cherish it, take advantage of it, do what God leads you to do. But they said you need to realize that this week's focus is about helping someone take one step closer to Christ. They said some of these people are on a journey that will take 9, 10, 11 or more steps that they will have to go to, and each step is its own process. And so they said if you can help one person take one step closer to Christ, this trip was a success for you, especially because you're looking at overcoming these religious boundaries that come as when you look at the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism, and really trying to show people what the gospel means to them when they feel like they already have this idea of who Christ is in their mind. Let's go ahead and go to the next picture. So this building is the actual tallest building in Seville, and pretty much everyone in Seville hates it. Because it broke the city ordinance. Once that city ordinance, I guess there was, I don't know the history of it, but there was some way that they were allowed to build this one skyscraper that is bigger than the bell tower, and you can see that it still has the wooden structuring around it, because even though the building is finished, the builders refused to declare it finished because the cost of property taxes and different things skyrockets once a building's actually finished instead of in construction. So they said that the floors and everything, it's a quarter to half full because no one wants to use it, no one wants to live there, no one wants to have their employment be there, no one wants to have anything to do with that tower. So if they took the lattices down from it and said it was complete, they would begin to lose more money than they probably already are on it, because they broke the city ordinance of building a building taller than the bell tower on the cathedral. So that was very interesting. It really gives you an idea of, even though they may not be super religious people in the way that they live their lives and on a daily basis, they have a very high regard for the church and for their Catholic faith. Go ahead and go to the next one. So again, I circle back to the picture of the church because I wanted to really kind of walk you guys through kind of what the week was like for me and my team. So we got there on a Friday afternoon, and we spent Friday evening just kind of resting, getting acclimated to the time change and everything. And Saturday, we really spent learning exactly what we would be doing throughout the week, kind of prepping for different things, as I'll show you in a little bit. So then we came to Sunday. So Sunday we got to attend church, and this was the church in Bermujos. And half the team got to attend this church, and I was fortunate enough to get to attend this one as well, because I was really excited to see, because we got to work in this one throughout the week, so I really wanted to experience a church service there. So this, I don't know when I took that picture, it's the same one from earlier, but this was our church service from Sunday morning. Go ahead and go to the next one. So this was their youth group. You can see, obviously, the girl sitting right in front of me was from my team, but the kids sitting on the couches, and the lady in the corner was the English teacher slash youth minister slash whatever. She kind of worked with the students in the church. But that was their youth group. It was about 8 kids that would attend there, and 5 of them were the pastor's children. So that was kind of eye-opening, and you could see obviously the attire that they wear. They dressed very nice over there, like on a daily basis. But then when they would come to church, it was almost like dress down time for some of them, which was just very counterintuitive to what we're used to. But this was their youth group. Go ahead and go to the next one. As you can see, the building was very narrow. And you can see in this picture from wall to wall how narrow it was, because it was 3 stories tall. and this is the bottom floor. So this was the basement of the church, but this is where their sanctuary was. Very much felt to me kind of like the youth room that we have over there, a little close on side-to-side wall space, but it's very functional for what they do there, and they don't have more than about 20 people at the most attend a Sunday service. And you can see they just have the speakers and the projector, and just off the side here, yeah, I didn't quite get it in the picture, the pastor's son, one of the pastor's sons actually runs the soundboard and the projector and everything. He's the kind of the tech guru of the church. But this was the pastor of the church of Bermujos who was preaching that morning. And the rest of our team got to go to the other Protestant church that is a church plant in Tamaris, which is the nearby other suburb. And that church is just a little bit different from this one, but those are the only two Protestant churches in the Seville and surrounding communities. And they have an average attendance of around 30 on a weekly basis between the two churches combined. So the idea of Protestant churches is very, very foreign and very difficult to inject people into in that community. Go ahead and go to the next one. I think it may be a video. We don't have to watch the whole video, but if you'll just play it and turn the sound up. This was them leading worship in Spanish. I thought it was really cool, so I took this minute. I thought that was really cool because if you guys didn't recognize that song, it's actually a song that David Crowder and his band made popular here in America, and they would sing it. And really, the only word that I understood of that was "oh," but it was really cool because I was sitting. My team was kind of spread out around the sanctuary, and many of them knew that song, and they would sing the words that they knew in English, and it almost sounded jumbled. There were times you could kind of hear it in the video where you couldn't really tell what was being said, but it was because there was this mix of languages, but it was just really a neat experience to see people of different languages and different origins worshiping the same God in their own language. It was a really, really neat experience. Go ahead and go to the next one. So, one of the big things that we did this week was we taught our students helped to lead an English camp, and I told you that when you're trying to build a connection with someone, you need to find something that they need or that they want from you to give them. And in some instances, that is this idea of hope. Well, in a situation like this, the thing that these people were desiring, the thing they wanted was to speak English. And that was something that we had that we could give to them. And so it allowed us to connect with these students, and ultimately it also allowed, because most of the times their parents would have to bring them to the English classes, so it allowed the teachers and our adult sponsors to get to interact with their parents and get to talk to them a little bit. And they would always go like, why did you guys take time out of your lives to come over here and teach my kid English? And we would get to tell them, it's because we love the Lord, and we want to serve Him, and we want to show the love that the Lord shows us to your children. And it was just very amazing to see that, because that's an idea that's foreign to them. Like, we were these weird volunteers that flew all this way to just help them out for what they felt was no reason. And so it really gave us an opportunity to witness to them in a unique way. But this was some of our team kind of mingling with the different students we had. We had 11 students on our team, and this was the first day of English camp, we had 35 Spanish students. So they were outnumbered by about 3 to 1. And the Spanish students spoke very little English. It was broken, but it was probably better than most people here speak Spanish. So they would be able to communicate. So this was a really good opportunity, and I think I put a couple pictures in here of some different games that we were able to do through that. So let's go ahead and go. Yeah, this was one where you would roll a dice and you'd move your piece to a question that was in English, and they would have to stand up, and to their group they would have to say the question in English, and then they would have to answer the question in English. And you can imagine how difficult that would be for us to do in a different language, but these students were able to pretty much do that pretty well, at least to a point to where you could understand or kind of help them form the rest of their sentence. So that was one of the games they did. Go ahead and go to the next one. This was one where they they listened to a lot of American music over there. So a lot of their words are in English. They don't change it into Spanish. So they know a lot of like songs that we think of as popular. They know the words of the song and they'll sing along even though they may not even know what the words mean. And so this was a game where they had the lyrics to I can't remember who it was now, a popular artist here in America. That the song was popular over there, and they cut out the lyrics and they had to listen to it and they had to put the lyrics in order. So they were learning the idea of like what the words were and everything. Go ahead and go to the next one. This was, I don't know if you guys have seen the paracord bracelets. They're kind of like a braided type of a bracelet. And we got to make those with the kids. And then one of the cool things was you use 3 braids. And so we got to, the whole idea was to share a little bit about the idea of a cord of many strands and the idea of the Trinity, but also to teach them this idea of over, under, between as you were working through those ideas of English, but to inject those ideas of the gospel into these conversations. Go ahead and go on. These were our 2 team coordinators, Josh and Todd, and this was a game where they had to do like pin the tail on the donkey, but it was pin the body part on the face, and so they'd have to like say what the body part was. So they'd have to say eye, nose, ear, eyebrow, things like that, and then they would blindfold them and walk them up, and I'm pretty sure one was cheating and the other one wasn't, but whatever. And then, this was, now in America, a lot of our youth groups and stuff, one of the mainstays is kind of like ping pong. You'll see that a lot of churches, their youth groups will have ping pong and everything, and everyone will kind of congregate around that and watch everyone play, and everyone would be a part of it. There it's foosball, or they just call it table soccer. But they would do groups of, usually we'll play one-on-one when we play here, but they would play teams of 2, so more people would be included, and they only played games to 2 or 3, and it was just really quick, rapid, and they were very good. They beat me pretty bad most of the time. But, this was actually probably the best of the table soccer players that they had. This kid's name is Cayetano. He was very interested. This was actually the day that Spain played in the World Cup, so he was wearing his Spanish national jersey. But our theme for the English camp was really just this idea of America, which sounds weird, but we decorated in all you can see on the wall American flags, and a lot of the prizes were red, white, and blue, and different things like that. But this kid was I really got to know this kid throughout the week and talked with him quite a bit. And his team won the prize of these sunglasses, and he was asking me, because you've got to think, over there a lot of the flags are just 3 bars of different colors. And he didn't really understand, I guess, even though I'm wearing a flag on my head, what the American flag really looked like, because he was asking me what order are the colors in. And I said, well, we don't really have an order, but we just say red, white, and blue. So he wanted his glasses to be in the correct order. So everyone note that his glasses are in the order of red, white, and then blue. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. These were 2 of the pastor's sons. I think I remember their names, but I don't want to say it wrong. I don't want to butcher it. But these were 2 of the pastor's sons that I got to talk to quite a bit about what it was like to be a pastor's kid in a community where, that idea of the church that your dad was in charge of was not very well accepted. So it was really, really neat to get to talk to them and kind of their experiences. And actually, one of the pastor's kids, one of his daughters, is actually about to come to America to spend the next school year in Kentucky. So I was like, they'll teach you some good English over there in Kentucky. But it was really neat to get to talk to the pastor's kids. Go ahead. This was a section of Bermujos that we did a lot of mission work in, as far as prayer walking and just walking up to people on the street and sharing the gospel and handing them information about the church, or the nonprofit organization that we were working with, is how they told us to say, because again, the idea of church is very sacred to them. But I took this picture. It's kind of an interesting panorama. I was standing in one spot and I took the picture kind of spinning around like that, but you can see that I'm completely surrounded by these very tall apartment buildings, and in this area it was just apartment building after apartment building after apartment building, and it was just incredible because they would, you can see they're also not super tall, so they didn't break the bell tower rule, but they were just about there. They were about as tall as they could be, and I mean there were just a bunch of them, so it was amazing how many people were tightly compact into this small little community. And another thing over there, they didn't really believe in air conditioning. And if you actually look on the map, Spain's pretty far south, and then this was in southern Spain, and so their climate's actually very similar to our climate here. So it was in the 90s Fahrenheit. It kept popping up, and it's like, oh, it's only 40 degrees outside, and I was like, that is not true, because it is a lot harder than 40 degrees, but that was 40 degrees Celsius, which is upper 90s. But they don't have air conditioning, so everyone there has their windows open, their doors open, everything's just fresh air type thing, and which was interesting because, as I said, Spain was playing in the World Cup as we were walking through this apartment complex, and we were prayer walking and kind of like looking for people to talk to, and Spain scored a goal, and it was just like everyone started yelling, and since all their windows and doors were open, you could just hear everything. It was very, very interesting experience. Go ahead and go to the next one. So this was, I couldn't really take any pictures of like me and my team sharing to people because that was just kind of awkward. But this was, we kind of passed one of our, a couple of our team members who were across the street and were sharing with this guy who had just parked his motorbike. A lot of them ride motorbikes over there because apparently you don't have to obey the laws if you ride a motorbike. And as you can see, he just pulled it right up on the sidewalk and chained it to a fence and left. But this was some of our team approaching this guy and talking to him, and I talked to them later. I showed them the picture, and they said they actually had a very nice conversation with this guy and thought that he did say that he had benefited from the Christian Center being there in some way, and he would like to come check it out sometime. So it just happened. Later I found out that this picture was of a good conversation that team had. This is Heath. He is the IMB missionary who was working at the church in Bermujos in that church plant. Throughout talking to him throughout the week, we both found out that we were graduates from Southwestern, so we decided we had to take a obligatory Southwestern t-shirt picture. This is kind of, that was kind of more what our mission part of the trip was about, was mainly the English camp and going out in the community and just approaching people and kind of talking to them a little bit about what they believe and everything. One quick story I want to share with you is one of the teams, I don't know what led them to do this, but it led to a really, really interesting experience for them. They walked into they showed us where it was later, and I was like, what in the world possessed you to walk in there? But they walked into this very grungy, dirty looking tattoo shop right across the street from the church, and they ended up getting to talk to the owner of the tattoo parlor, which this was very rare to have someone say that they were an atheist or an agnostic, because most of them would say, I'm Catholic. But he claimed to be an atheist because he couldn't believe that that there would be a God that would allow some of the things that he had seen happen in his life. He had lost some friends and different things. And they asked him what his name was. He goes, well, now you're going to laugh when I say this, but my name's Angel. So that was kind of a cool experience, but they really got to talk to him and get to know him a little bit. And like I said, his tattoo shop was just down the street from the church. And so it really led to an opportunity for Heath and the team that's there in Bermujos to reach out to him and further exchanges, because he was very receptive to the idea of them communicating. So these last couple pictures were just kind of some pictures of me and my team doing some kind of cultural things, but that's all part of the experience, is getting immersed into the culture. This was at a restaurant. It's called a tapas bar, which sounds really bad whenever you say it wrong, and so I've been trying not to say that, but it was a restaurant, okay? It was just a restaurant. But tapas, T-A-P-A-S, is a family-style meal. And so they would order, for a group this big, they would order 4 orders of everything, and they would just come out on a plate and then set it, and everyone would just go to stab them with forks trying to get what they liked. And so you would sit at these long tables, and they would just bring it out family style and everything like that. So that was kind of a picture. I got to sit at the head of the table, so I had to take a picture of everyone down the table. Go ahead and go to the next one. This was probably my favorite thing that I ate as far as Spanish food goes while I was there. It looks really gross in this picture, but it was actually really amazing. The best way I can describe what this was they took like a big bowl and they put spaghetti sauce almost in it. It was like a ketchup-y spaghetti sauce. There's a tomato base. And they took like what made me think of my grandma's homemade potato chips, or French fries, They were like little fried potatoes cut very thin, and they would lay that on top of this spaghetti sauce and bake it. And then they would bring that out to the table, and everyone would take the big spoon and they would serve themselves some on their plate. So I did that, and then they would come around with the sunny side up egg and drop it right on top, and you would just eat it all together. So it was kind of tasted like hash browns, ketchup, and eggs all mixed together. But it was actually really, really good, and it was one of my favorite things. But go ahead. I was telling you that the walkways there, the alleyways, are very narrow. It's very European. They do it to, when they would build the buildings, they didn't want the sun because it was so hot. They wanted the shade. So they build the buildings so close together, but you can see it's barely 2 people wide in some areas. And the motorbikes would just turn and drive right down them. They don't fall over. But there would be other alleyways that were just barely a car width apart, and the cars would drive down these, and there's like sidewalk that's barely the width of your foot, and then road that's barely the width of your car, and you're like pushed up against the buildings and taxis going by. But very, very different culturally as far as walking around the city and everything. Go ahead and go to the next one. So, as I said, Spain's rule had been turned over multiple times, and one of the groups that was in charge of Spain were the Moors, or the Islamic group, and this was one of the walls that they built so this wall was probably built in the, I guess it would be the 14th or 15th century, was how old this wall was. And this, inside that wall, was kind of a smaller castle type thing, and now it's used when the king and queen of Spain travel to Seville. That is their home away from home there. But we got a picture. These are all the guys from our trip, the male leaders and the male students. We took all the girls kept taking girls' pictures, and we were like, we feel left out, so we took a guy's picture. I just really like this picture. But this was at the Plaza de España, which was just a really, really cool thing. And if you want to hear more about that, I'll tell you more about that later. But it has 2 towers at the very end of it. And long story short, I was taking a picture of one of our leaders, and he was wanting this up shot like that I got right there. And I just put my phone on the ground, clicked it. It turned out to be like this really great picture. And I was really jealous that I didn't get that picture of myself. So I had one of the students lay down there, and it took him like 5 minutes to recreate this picture I accidentally took in like 1 second. But I really liked the way that picture turned out. Go ahead, I think that may be the last one. Nope, okay. This was, again, like I said, you could see the bell tower pretty much everywhere. And this was, we got to go up in this, they called it the mushrooms. There was just this weird looking thing that you could go up in and look out over the city, but you can see on the very left edge of the picture is the bell tower that stands over the city. I think that's the last one, correct? Okay, cool. So I just really wanted to share that with you guys a little bit today, and really thank you guys for your support and allowing me to go on that trip. We had a great time. The church planners that we worked with there were really, really pleased with the way our group connected with the people, connected with the kids, and were really happy with the way that our trip turned out. And so I want to just thank you guys for your prayers and your support. We really did get to see God's work being done in the lives of those people that we came in contact with. With that said, I got home late Thursday night, stayed in Oklahoma City, and didn't actually get back to Tulsa until Friday around noon, and then had to immediately turn around. We're about to take the students to Mission Norman this afternoon. We're going to be heading to Norman this afternoon after we have lunch. And so I wanted to come to you guys again and just request prayer for our students, prayer for the Mission Norman, prayer for the apartment complexes that we will be doing our mission work in. And I just want to take a second to kind of lead in this idea of prayer. So if I could have all the students that are coming to Mission Norman come up here, please. Surprise. Quickly. We've got a few more students that are going to be meeting us here that we're taking as well. But these are the students that have taken this idea of doing mission work in our state and want to make a difference. And so I'm not going to ask everyone to come up here and stand around them and everything. But if you guys wouldn't mind standing and joining me in prayer over our trip to Mission Norman and over these students, I would greatly appreciate it. Father, thank you so much for this day and this opportunity that I had to get to do your work in Spain. And I just pray that as we transition into a different style of mission work, that you would bless our trip to Mission Norman this week, that you would just help these students to stay alert and focused on your will and how to share your love with the kids that we come in contact with. And I pray that you would help us to create such a change in the kids that we get to have an influence on, that they would be able to reach their parents, and we would have an open door to get to share the love of what you did by sending your son to die for us with the parents of the students that we get to work with this week. And I just pray that you would continue to work in the ministry that is Mission Norman and reaching out to those in need in the community. And I pray that you would lift up the apartment complexes that we will be working with, and just give us an ability to reach the people who live there, and to do the work that you've set aside for us to do in those communities. I thank you so much for these students and their willingness to serve you in the way that we will this week, and I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys so much for your support of all the missions that our student ministries go through.